Welcome back to round two. Looks like we have Lou Stefanovic versus Craig Maisley. Craig is going to be playing an unpowered Goblins list, and Lou is playing a big red type deck.
I really like Goblins as an unpowered deck choice. It has a lot of game versus the major archetypes. You've got Goblin Lackey and Warren Instigator to circumvent all of the sphere effects that come out of the workshop player. You're not even casting your spells. And then you have Cavern of Souls, which is really strong versus anything that would want to counter your goblins. I'm very impressed with its ability to grind out games versus the creature-based decks. I lost a game where they literally Gem Palm Incinerated 4 Dark Confidants in a row. It was devastating.
Yeah, if you're not running Stifles, there's not really a whole lot of ways to deal with that.
And even if you are, you'd still be going down a card because you can either stifle the card draw of the cycle or the
ability.
So really not a great place to be.
Excellent.
Now Lou, on the other side of the table, his deck is very interesting. It's a mountain-based deck, aggro, as old as the format itself. This iteration runs some really fun stuff in the form of liquid metal coating along with Gorilla Shaman, some artifact hate with Shattering Spree and Goblin Welder. So he's hoping to play against workshops or some of the blue decks. Anyone who has a really greedy mana base, he has Magus of the Moon and Blood Moon. And then at the top end, he actually runs Koth of the Hammer.
Seems like a pretty solid way to just seal the game.
It kills Jace very often. Jace is not the only planeswalker in this format. Now, both of these decks feature Lightning Bolt. That's kind of a nod to how important it is to have a 1 casting cost or cheap removal spell to kill cards like Lodestone Golem and Dark Confidant. So we open up with Mana Crypt, Chalice at 0, and then he's got Cavern on Goblins, and he runs out a Goblin Pile Driver.
Seems like a pretty reasonable turn 1.
Yeah, the Chalice at 0 versus an unknown deck is really strong. Lou does have some 0 casting cost stuff, but it's not going to be as backbreaking as it would be versus a
powered deck.
Now, Lou has a Volcanic Island, which probably has Craig trying to figure out what's going on. He knows that Lou is famous for playing red decks, and he's been innovating them for years. The blue is kind of a new addition. He's splashing for Ancestral Recall, and I believe some sideboard considerations.
I wonder if he just took damage off of that Mana Crypt. He rolled a 4. Usually odds is for damage. Looks like we have some notations, goblins on Cavern of Souls.
Now we've got a mountain, and let's see where he goes from here. He has a red and a colorless, not making it uncounterable. That's interesting. Oh, still not uncounterable. Okay. We have a Sting Scourger.
Sting Scourger.
Just a body.
Yep, not going to be bouncing anything.
Ah, this makes sense. So another Pile Driver.
There we go.
So
just get in for 1. Might as well get the damage while you can. His whole hand's on the table now.
Next turn, he's going to be able to pay the Echo for the Sting Scourger and send across with the whole team. That's some significant damage early. Now, I really like Chalice of the Void in the Goblin deck because an interaction that people miss a lot of the time is Cavern of Souls allows you to play right through your own Chalice. So you can have a Chalice at 1.
And still play your Goblin Lackey.
Absolutely. It is... the first time that I played against Goblins and they dropped the Chalice at 1, I could have countered it, and I didn't because I was like, that's awesome. The only way I can lose this game is if you have a Lackey, and then he dropped the Lackey.
Right.
And I lost. It was really fun.
It looks like in his list he actually is not playing Aether Vial, and I think he just switched it out for Chalice of the Void.
Well, they also have Warren Instigator. That's another way. Aether Vial is just a little too slow, and Null Rod is a very real card in the format, as is Phyrexian Revoker. Simian Spirit Guide powered out that Magus of the Moon on the other side of the table, traded with the Pile Driver. You'll notice both of these lists run Simian Spirit Guide as well. It kind of functions as a Mox of sort. You only get to use it once, but it's also a body, and that can become relevant in these type of creature decks. I mean, they're trying to turn guys sideways to win.
They can't play 4 Lotus Petals, otherwise I'm sure they would. So they're playing... Well, maybe not necessarily.
I would take SSG over Lotus Petal in a deck like this. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but they absolutely can become blockers.
Looks like he ran out of liquid metal coating.
Yeah,
and
that's
a strip
card
mine.
that people are not too familiar with. It turns any permanent into an artifact, so that'll allow him to use Gorilla Shaman to blow up his opponent's lands. It'll allow him to use his main deck Shattering Sprees and Goblin Welders to get rid of creatures that are problems. That card can become a real problem. I had actually played Lou round 1, and I had to counter Liquid Metal Coating because he had already resolved Gorilla Shamans.
Oh, and there's a Goblin Tinkerer.
Another card that is specifically targeting the workshop players in the Time Bolt decks.
So if I had to... Is Stink Scourger a 2/2?
It is a 2/2.
So the previous turn he swung with 2 pile drivers and a Sting Scourger, so that would make each pile driver have 5 power.
Yes.
So he got through for 7 last turn, and then 5 this turn, so that's 12 damage total. So Lou, I believe, should be around 8 life right now.
He's got that Spirit Guide as a blocker. That's going to be able to trade with the pile driver if Craig decides to attack. He really doesn't have too much of a choice. He can wait until he sees a Lightning Bolt or let me get the name here, Incinerator. Sorry, Gem Palm Incinerator. But you pretty much, your red deck, you got to turn you guys sideways.
Right. It's all about ending the game quickly. I believe Lou's going to trade with the pile driver here, taking 3 damage, going down to 5. And then he's going to see a wasteland on his volcanic island. I'm not sure how much damage Craig has taken off of his mana crypt.
It's likely not going to become relevant this game.
Yeah.
Lou's deck is really not designed to beat goblins.
No.
Goblins is probably one of the worst matchups you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
There's tons of creatures. You know, the liquid metal coating with Shattering Spree, that works really well for getting rid of a single problem permanent, but I mean, you really don't want to be using that to try and get rid of goblins.
Yeah. Oh, and Craig's going to play a Spirit Guide of his own. Pass the turn. Lou is at 2 life, I believe. Dead on board unless he can... He has 3 cards in his hand.
Well,
He's going to play a Koth.
I think he's thinking about it.
Maybe he doesn't want to show Koth.
Yeah, he's not going to reveal
Koth
the
isn't
information.
Koth isn't gonna win him this game, and he doesn't want his opponent to know that he's on Koth, because I would never guess that my opponent was about to drop a Koth of the Hammer.
When I played against Lou at Pandemonium, he dropped a Koth on me, and I was actually thinking, what could he possibly drop at 4 mana that would be a problem? And I thought of Koth, and I was like, there's no way he's playing Koth. And then he dropped it. It was pretty surprising. If you don't answer the card, I mean, it will kill you.
What's that top card of his sideboard? Is that a Koth emblem?
That is a Koth emblem, yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, if he could get to the point where Koth gets an emblem, I don't see how you lose to goblins at that point.
Right.
But that's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, it's quite an uphill battle.
Now, his Magus of the Moons and his Blood Moons are going to be totally dead, except for, I guess, shutting off Wasteland. So, I mean, that's really not worth having. The Magus of the Moon is a body. It's something. But yeah, this is really not a good matchup for Lou. It's going to be tough. We'll see what he can do to try and make this, get the win, or at least go to 3 games.
What do you think Craig brings in? He's got Ingot Chewers, Thorn of Amethyst, Shattering Spree, Earwig Squad, Grafdigger's Cage, Tormod's Crypt, Surgical Extraction, and Piling Needle. I could maybe see a Needle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good reason for Lou to have not played the Planeswalker there. Craig really doesn't have too much of a reason to think that Pithing Needle would be that useful.
Right.
I mean, Gorilla Shaman is going to be able to kill it for the most part. I guess you could run out Pithing Needle on Gorilla Shaman, and then he still has his other artifact
Still has
cards.
the big problems.
So yeah, it's definitely a difficult deck to sideboard against. In general, your Ingot Chewers are going to be coming in versus the Workshop decks, along with your Shattering Sprees. Versus Dredge, he's got a good selection of cards. Pithing Needle comes in versus both of those decks. And then versus the blue decks, he's got a Singleton Earwig Squad. What he's able to do with that is hit with a Lackey, put in a Matron, and then tutor it up and then play it all on the same turn. So even having that one Earwig Squad is really a big deal.
Yeah, and then you can remove a Time Vault, a Jace the Mind Sculptor, and I don't know, a Blightsteel Colossus, and then just they totally have to rely on a fair game of Magic to win the game if they're only running the one Jace, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, yeah, it's really punishing. And you know, honestly, with a Goblin list, Jace might not even be a serious concern. He may just be a 4-mana
Right.
brainstorm that gains them a little bit of life, which you're really not that worried about.
Nope. You're going to be taking that life right back.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the Earwig squad. He's going to be hitting for 5 a turn, so he's pretty devastating. And you probably don't care if they bounce an Earwig squad. Prowling them out again is really not a problem.
I'd say not.
He has some fun stuff with Kiki Jiki and Krenko. Might be a little greedy. They're definitely fun.
Kiki Jiki cannot copy Krenko because it's non-legendary creatures, right?
Correct. Correct. That would be...
Otherwise, he could just make infinite copies of himself.
Yes. Yeah, the Kiki Jiki, they luckily didn't completely break him before he left the printing press, but he still does a lot of work. In terms of value plays, you can copy Matron, you can copy
Sting Scourger,
Goblin Recruiter, or Ringleader, and any of those are going to create card advantage. And then in terms of bringing just the violence, you've got Goblin Pile Driver.
Right.
Making copies of him is brutal.
Maybe copy a Goblin War Chief so you can drop your entire hand on a turn. Everything costs 2 less.
One interaction that people sometimes miss with Kiki Jiki is it's at end of turn sacrifice. So you can go past the end step triggers, copy a Pile Driver, untap, make another copy, and then swing with all 3. I don't know that they have math that can figure out how much damage that is, but it's pretty advanced.
Yeah.
Now we've got Soul Ring and Mana Crypt on Craig's side of the table, along with the Simian Spirit Guides, so he does have a lot of acceleration, even though he's unpowered.
It's going to provide for a lot of explosive turn 1s, which is what you need in a Goblin deck.
If you can connect with the Warren Instigator on turn 2, that can put the game away right there, depending.
Just uncounterably put 2 Goblins into play. That seems a bit ridiculous.
It's a little bit fairer than Tinker, but not by that much.
Not by much. So they're both keeping their 7s.
Lou's opening up with a Scalding Tarn.
Going down to 19. Gonna tutor up, I imagine, a basic mountain here. Yep, basic mountain. What set do you think that mountain's from? Is that a Mirage Mountain?
You know, I can't tell. It looks like a Portal one to me, but I don't know.
It could be Portal, yeah.
It could also be Mirage. Nice looking art from here.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're opening up with a Chrome Mox.
Interesting.
And we're going to imprint a red card. Didn't catch what it was. Likely not going to matter. He's got 2 red open on the first turn.
See if we can...
Almost looks like it has a watermark on it. From one of the newer sets, maybe.
Can't quite make it out. If anybody has a good guess to what it is, please leave that in the comment section below. We would definitely love to hear feedback about it. And Craig is going to start things off with a Cavern of Souls on Goblins. Seems like a good play. And a Goblin Lackey.
Lackey is...
Turn 1 Lackey.
Exactly what he's... Oh, and a
Mana Crypt. And a Chalice at 0. No, not a Chalice at 0. A Chalice at 1. We're going to get a Bolt to the Lackey in response to the Chalice at 1.
That is too bad that he did it in that order. If he had played the Chalice at 1 first, he could have powered out his Lackey
through the Chalice
that would have
uncounterably.
been amazing.
So a Chalice at 0 and a Chalice at 1. Yeah.
That cuts off a lot of plays.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. I don't think that Craig was aware of that interaction. Otherwise, he might have also considered holding on to the Chalice at 0 here and running it out at 2. That would shut off a large portion of Lou's deck.
Right. Is that another...
Another Cavern, yes.
Another Cavern.
Both naming Goblins. There's no real time where you're going to need to make a Simian Spirit Guide uncounterable.
No. Or an Instigator. Looks like we're not too upset about that Lackey going away.
Still, the tempo loss is
significant.
If Lou drops a blocker here... then
could be a problem. Simian Spirit Guide would actually be a problem right here.
yes, it would.
As Craig doesn't actually have any red mana for Gem Palm Incinerator's ability.
Or Lightning Bolt, which would get countered anyway. So yeah, he's really... Any creatures are going to be hard to remove on the other side of the table.
Right.
Now, it's noticeable he doesn't have any kind of lords that give his creatures +1/+1. Common and Legacy, especially if anybody's running Warren Instigator, because you get the bonus for both the first strike and the regular combat damage. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's coming across.
Looks like an uncontested... That's a pile driver, the DCI pile driver, which is very nice. And
just a single trigger.
He doesn't have...
And the Spirit Guide.
Yep, pumping out a Spirit Guide.
Spirit Guides are swinging for the fences in this matchup.
Yep. Spirit Guide is not a goblin, right?
It's not.
He's a gorilla spirit or something like that.
I believe that's correct. So pile driver had got through to 1.
So that's 2 damage on Lou. So he's at 17 now, including his fetch.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Chalice at 1 is really hurting him here.
Yeah, I can imagine. Shattering Spree would be good here. Nope, his own Simian Spirit Guide. So, let's see.
Ape-on-ape violence here.
Yeah, can't forget to roll for Mana Crypt.
Yeah, the nice thing about Mana Crypt in a deck like Goblins is it's pretty unlikely the game's going to last long enough to kill you.
Right. So, Craig's just turning all his guys sideways. It looks like his Simian Spirit Guide's going to die this turn, no matter what, if he blocks. The Pile Driver is a 3/2. The Instigator swings as a 2/2, essentially, because it's a 1/1 with double strike. Okay, he gets a Goblin Lackey. The Pile Driver is going away, but the Spirit Guide's gone too, so...
Yeah, and he still has 5 damage on board. So Lou's in a tough spot here.
Looks like he just took
getting swarmed.
4 down to 13, correct? So yeah, Lou's in a little bit of trouble. He needs to consistently be putting bodies on the table every turn in order to deal with this, and see missing that one right there. Oh, finally some damage off Mana Crypt. There we go. So 17 to 13 now. Getting in for 2, 4, 5 damage. No triggers. Resolved. Nothing happens. It's okay. So he's taking 5, going down to 8 life. What does he need to draw here? A Koth?
He needs like a Pyroclasm effect,
Pyroclasm, yeah.
Pyroclasm, Rough and Tumble, whichever version he runs. He'd probably run Pyroclasm. There's no real reason to run the Rough Tumble here. Would like to note the Mana Crypt is a much better addition if you're going to be playing unpowered in a really aggressive deck. If you're thinking about playing a blue deck and kind of playing a fair game with like Snapcasters and stuff and be unpowered.
You're going to expect to have more turns in the blue deck.
Yes. Oh no, Fire Blast. Desperate times, desperate measures.
He's at 8 life and he's Fire Blasting an Instigator. Not really where you want to be, because now he has no lands. Still taking 3 damage, going down to 5. He did increase his clock, or reduce his clock, however you want to look at it. He bought himself a turn by making that play. Yeah, but without any lands or plays to back it up, it's not really gonna... It's really just delaying the inevitable. Giving his opponent more chances to take damage off of Mana Crypt, but still not going to get him there.
Yeah, you can see he's stranded there with a Lightning Bolt in hand. That is a really good Chalice.
This is the lethal attack right here. Yep.
And that is the match.
So Goblins beats Big Red, or All in Red, or I don't know exactly what do you think is a more appropriate name for Lou's deck?
I'll have to ask him. I think he definitely, with as original as that brew is, he definitely gets the naming right.
Yeah,
I would say anyone who's looking at playing unpowered, Goblins is definitely a real contender.
Right. So that was round 2, and we'll join you briefly in round 3.